Nothing like using the Samurai Jack intro song to grab your attention. Because I just know when I was a kid, if I heard that coming from the TV, I'd be sprinting straight to my couch. Samurai Jack comes from the golden age of Cartoon Network cartoons and follows the story of a stoic samurai caught in a seemingly never-ending battle against a shape-shifting demon of darkness known as Aku. This show was pretty much my gateway drug into anime, as at the time, it really did feel like one of the most ambitious kids shows out there. The story is incredibly dark, and the show is pretty violent from what I can remember, and they took the whole "they're just robots" loophole about as far as you could take it. The first seasons of the show aired in August of 2001, but was unfortunately cancelled by Cartoon Network in 2004 after the 4th season aired. During this time, a Samurai Jack video game was published by Sega called The Shadow of Aku. Looking back on it, this game was pretty decent, but was also somewhat bare bones in terms of combat, story, graphics, and yeah, it was pretty janky. So it didn't take me long before I decided my next speedrun project would instead be the latest Samurai Jack game, released in 2020, which is a canon retelling of the 5th season, featuring an alternate ending with Jack. For this reason, I'm going to avoid talking about the story as much as I possibly can to avoid spoiling both the plot of the show and the game. But that shouldn't be too difficult, as this game has a lot going on with it. Way more than I anticipated when I first picked it up, and the speedrun route is still being developed as we speak. So unfortunately for today's video, I only have concepts of a speedrun. Instead, what I did is I made a segmented speedrun with the world record holder Ponton using a theoretical route showcasing all of the new strategies and skips to see if it can end up being faster than the current world record. Also, at the end of the video, I will be announcing a bounty for this game in hopes to get the speedrun even faster, because I feel like there's still so much to be discovered. Either way, I hope you all enjoy. So the first thing to point out with this game is that there are two main speedrun categories for it: Any% and New Game Plus. Both are pretty self-explanatory, but play out very differently. This is mainly due to the special ability that comes with upgrading Jack's magic sword to level 4. Well, that and also having practically infinite ammo with the most powerful weapons in the game, that also helps quite a bit. With the level 4 sword, Jack unlocks an ability that surges him forward through the air, although the text for this upgrade specifically says it rushes him towards the ground. But due to a bug, speedrunners have figured out how to change the attack trajectory to fly parallel to the ground rather than towards it. Basically, by performing a jump good, which is this game's version of a crouch jump, and throwing a projectile, we can then perform the diving strike. But if a light attack is pressed during the diving animation, Jack will fly straight forward rather than diving, turning him into Goku for a brief period. This trick can only be performed when using the jump goods version of the dive attack, so the community coined the technique dive good. With the addition of this technique, the New Game Plus category very quickly got cut in half, with speedrunners now having the ability to fly over walls and pretty much entire stages. Any% is still able to make use of this trick, but it requires a whopping 70,000 gold in order to purchase. Initially, runners like Ponton weren't even sure if this was worth the effort in collecting so much gold, but the late game skips saved several minutes. Other than this, the Any% category was ran mostly vanilla, only employing the use of a handful of out-of-bounds tricks throughout the mid-game, of course up until the point when the level 4 sword gets unlocked, and then the runs begin looking similar. But I had a feeling that there had to be more tricks and skips out there somewhere, especially considering how broken the NG Plus category is. So I did what I do best, and got to work. I stayed up for most of the night, grinding away, working tirelessly, on writing up a Discord message to Toxicpinhead, the best licensed game glitch hunter I know of, and also the world record holder of the other Samurai Jack game. Surprisingly, he hadn't already torn this game apart yet, apparently due to him quitting the game after not being able to beat the hardest difficulty, which just goes to show how difficult this game really is. But I roped him in by showing him an out-of-bounds trick that's doable in NG Plus to skip at least half the 3rd level, but at the time wasn't possible for Any%. At first I didn't think he was interested, but after only a few hours, he managed to find something. So the biggest issue with the skip wasn't the getting out of bounds part, but actually reaching the boss lair. You see, while out of bounds, it's possible to hit a trigger to load in the cave, but by doing so, you unload the ground underneath Jack, and he falls to his death. This is no issue for NG Plus, however, since they can essentially just fly in the air. So what Toxic figured out is that after loading in the other half of the level, you can do a double jump and have just enough space to land on this platform. From here we can climb back on top of the tunnel and make our way to the boss. Afterwards I was thinking, sweet. Maybe with this skip added in while trying to match the world record splits as closely as possible, maybe I would have a chance to get a top run. But Toxic didn't stop there. For some reason, and I have no idea why he was doing this, but he figured out that while using his mouse to drag the game window while jumping, he's able to bug out the game, giving him additional height while using his pole to perform some pretty amazing skips. The problem is, dragging the screen like this is pretty much just dropping the FPS down super low, which I would guess would be banned in most communities, and furthermore seemed hardware and firmware dependent, so it wasn't going to be allowed either way. Even still, this gave Toxic a lot of insight as to how the game worked both in and out of bounds in a lot of different areas. But then at some point, Toxic must have thought, wait, if this is how the game performs on low FPS, then how does it work on high FPS? For a long time, it was assumed high FPS was just slow for a myriad of different reasons, so nobody ever played on anything above 60, since 60 was a built-in function in the game. But the game also allows for unlimited FPS, and on higher frame rates, the physics can get a bit wonky. For instance, we were already aware of guard sliding into certain slopes allows Jack to ride up them, and that using the aerial attack with a mace can propel Jack upwards in certain corners, which is even used currently as a backup strat. But as it turns out, these interactions become multitude stronger when paired with FPS in the range of 240, allowing for a whole new wave of skips. Not only this, but there are a handful of corners that Jack can get trapped in, giving him additional jumps. But these are somewhat inconsistent, and he can fall just as easily as he can get extra jumps, so for my run, I'm excluding all of them. Keep all of this in mind when watching this run. Do you ever get tired of hunting and eating undercooked intergalactic space worms? Yeah, they are a bit chewy. But thankfully today's video sponsor Factor exists, so you'll never have to worry about eating boring or bland food again. Factor is the best food delivery service out there, sending out fresh, never frozen, prepackaged meals straight to your doorstep. Factor is perfect for busybodies that don't always have time to prepare 3 meals a day, but don't want to resort to costlier and unhealthier options like takeout or your typical fast food delivery. No matter the case, Factor has options for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, with an expansive menu of 35 different items to choose from weekly, as well as 60 add-ons including different snacks and beverages. Factor meals are so convenient as they heat up in as little as 2 minutes in the microwaves, with no worries of cleaning up afterwards, so you can spend more time locking in on whatever you do best. And right now, there's no better time to try out Factor because by using my code EZScapeJan50 at checkout, you can get 50% off your first box as well as free shipping. Link will be in both the pinned comment and description. Special thanks again to Factor for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get back to the speedrun. So to begin, we'll start in Aku's mines on easy difficulty, and as you can expect, this is a tutorial section with almost no skips. But it is a good time to explain the game's mechanics. This game is pretty much a perfect blend of fluid 3D platformer controls and movement options, as well as an in-depth combat system. For starters, Jack always begins movement by jogging before bursting into a sprint. For this reason, it's important to keep direct paths while interrupting movement as minimally as possible. The first movement option you can see me making use of is dodge, which is useful for closing small gaps, and its end lag can be cancelled out of by jumping, making it a good movement option for platforming sections. Once this is done, I could go hop over the force field and skip the next encounter, but these are tutorial enemies on easy mode, so I think it's more worth it to kill them, because it doesn't take very long anyways, and the resources are really useful. One thing to point out is you'll see me doing different combos in each bug. The roundhouse combo with the sword light attack is able to take out the beetles with higher health, but it knocks them over, causing them to blow up. Until they officially blow up, the game doesn't register them as being killed, so the last beetles always need to be sliced to proceed through the force fields quicker. The sword attacks also have a higher chance of hitting multiple enemies, so I'll avoid using the roundhouse when enemies are stacked. Moving on to the next ambush, the game is going to force us to learn our first ability, the Kai attack. Each weapon has its own Kai attack, and for this group we'll want to use a fist since its strong aerial attack splatter effect does enough damage to kill these guys. Once enough are taken out, the Kai attack will be used to AoE the remaining enemies, and we can exit the area. In this next section we'll want to instantly unlock Rushing Guard, which I just call guard sliding. This will allow Jack to slide during his guard for a speed boost, and it can be cancelled out of with either an attack or a jump. The fist guard slide is extremely useful. As you can see in this area, it allows us to grab additional skill fire with a height increase, as well as clear small gaps, all with a consistent speed boost. This will be our main movement option whenever we don't have enough room to sprint. In the next section, we'll begin getting ambushed by gator bots, but the guard slide attack makes quick work of them. You'll notice I sometimes extend my guard slide longer or shorter depending on how far away I am from an enemy, and when an enemy is too far away, or I don't know where they are, I can use a ground pound to locate them because the attack assist in this game is OP. It will always target the closest enemy with health, even immediately following a kill, allowing Jack to take out herds of enemies easily. The game will continue teaching us more tutorial stuff like how to open chests and how to throw ranged weapons. What's pretty funny about this is that to prevent the game from soft locking, it will always spawn 10 Kaiken when Jack throws a projectile while having 0 Kaiken in the inventory. While this would theoretically be an infinite Kaiken dupe, because we're so early in the game, we don't even have access to enough projectiles to make the dupe useful, so it's currently shelved as a potential strategy. Anyways, moving on to the next area, normally we would mow down these enemies to drop this tree, but instead I'm going to set the FPS to 240 and the graphics to low to avoid any potential frame drops. I should probably mention that the in-game timer is always paused when the game is either paused or mid-cutscene, which is also the official timing method for this game. Like I said earlier, money in this run is going to be tight, so I grab as much as possible and then slide into this tree to fly over it. Part of the reason I don't skip the earlier enemies in the mines and grab extra skill fire is to afford double jump to make the skip more consistent. I actually forgot to unlock it here, but I still had enough height to clear the jump. Then I'll revert my settings back, equip my sword, and head into battle with the possessed Scotsman. Assuming I didn't get really unlucky, I should have collected enough Kai fire for a Kai attack that after landing 7 guard slide attacks with the sword, he'll be at a low enough health that the fist Kai attack finishes him off. The reason we want to use the fist Kai attack over the sword is because the sword is a multi-hit attack, and by using it, the Scotsman would get staggered after the first hit, reducing damage by 50%, which is avoided completely with the other move. This segment could have been a lot quicker, but at 228 is still 16 seconds faster than the current record. I just really liked how many coins I picked up on this run, so I kept this segment despite Ponton managing to get a 220 himself. In the next level, Boon's castle, we start out in this weird 2.5D section. Whenever Jack runs into cutscene triggers, we can either dodge or guard slide into them to essentially store his sprint so he continues on after skipping the cutscene, and the same goes for NPCs. Normally here we'd like to have throw unlocked, but I got a lot more gold and skill fire, which I think is a lot more important, so it's not a big deal. Per usual, we'll want to finish off the last enemy of every group with a slice, otherwise we'll have to wait longer for the next group to spawn. It's worth pointing out that every enemy type has their own weakness, sometimes to multiple weapons, so we're always making sure to use the right weakness on the right enemy, assuming they're not so weak to die in one hit to anything. In the next section, I'll usually always be able to unlock throw, meaning we can finally have the 3 most useful early game abilities unlocked: rushing guard, double jump, and throw. Throw can only be used to finish off enemies, but it's really good for a handful of reasons. The first is that it can't be blocked, second is that it destroys robot enemies instantly, and third is that if the attack hits other enemies in the background, it one-shots them. It can be pretty impossible to direct the sword throw attacks, but when it works out, it is really nice. Anyways, heading downstairs, we'll have a massive group of enemies to take out, making use of the guard slide attack to clear them quickly. This is a really good time to collect and farm resources like Kai Fire, coins, projectiles, and Bushido, which is a scarce collectible used for unlocking abilities in conjunction with skill fire. After finishing out the last bigger demon enemies, we'll want to collect as much stuff as possible and then clear this big boy as he drops down with a Kai attack. This should destroy 2 crates behind the door, exposing 200 coins that can be grabbed through the wall. Continuing on, we'll keep grabbing items from NPCs and clearing out more mobs of enemies. I actually like this room because the force field takes such a long time to go down that you can pretty much collect everything lying around. In the next room, we'll be forced to grab a bow and arrow before proceeding forward, which will come in handy later on. Moving on, we'll reach another 2D section, and I pretty much just optimize the amount of time Jack is able to sprint for while avoiding enemy attacks. Towards the end, there will be another ambush with satisfying guard slide multi-kills. It's about as fun as it looks. Then before proceeding to the next section, I'm going to do a quick menu to disable attack assist and turn the FPS to 240 for some shenanigans. Honestly, I only turn the FPS up just so I can slide into this tree branch for some clean platforming, but I think it's worth it. At the top, there will be 2 hunters with handguns. Something I found out while learning this game is that if you use throw to steal their guns, the game not only gives you their handgun, but also 5 bullets in addition to their guaranteed drop of 20 bullets each, giving us 50 bullets in total. This will come into play later in the level. For now, I'm going to grab the revolver from out of the chest, and then do another boosted guard slide up to this chest to collect some additional Bushido. I'll talk to the Scotsman for a gem to sell later on, and then I'll drop below to collect some more coins. On the way out, I'll equip the handgun and the bullets, equip the sword, and then unlock some abilities I've been holding off on, like good luck to increase drop rates, as well as parry, and then finally turn the FPS and graphics back up. I'll then begin climbing up the mountain. In these 2D sections, a throw with a sword is extremely useful as the enemies behind have no way to avoid the attack. Also, I haven't mentioned yet, but I have done a lot of testing trying to bypass this climb up the mountain, but this entire level is surrounded by a massive invisible wall. One so massive that it takes an enormous amount of height to clear, far greater than any wall slides can get us. Anyways, once we get near the top, we can jump, light attack with the sword to gain a small amount of height, and then double jump out of the attack to just barely jump onto this platform with a chest. Afterwards, we'll stop at the Samurai's shop for a sword upgrade, which we can just barely afford, and then head to the top to fight the boss. While heading up there, I'd like to explain weapon durability. So those handguns I collected earlier off those hunters have significantly less durability than the revolver, 250 durability to be exact. This means after firing all 50 bullets we collected, we can break both handguns, which is beneficial for 2 reasons. The first is that broken weapons drop Bushido equivalent to the durability, which again in this case is 250, but also attacks performed during weapon breaks gain 5 times damage. Keep that in mind during the fight. Heading into battle, we'll first deal with an onslaught of beetles. I'll start by taking out any large groups that are close by, and then once I feel like I've gotten any quick ones out of the way, I'll begin rapid firing on the rest. The ranged weapons in this game feel very intuitive that they auto aim onto the next enemy right after shooting, so when I see it shoot a single enemy more than once, I can tell there's none left to shoot at, so I opt to collect more coins. After the cutscene, you can buffer a Kai attack from pretty much anywhere to one-shot this beetle. After skipping the cutscenes, I'll begin open firing on the other beetle until the gun breaks, dealing a massive amount of damage. After it breaks, I'll equip the other gun to finish the job and dodge into the 250 Bushido lying on the ground, and I guess in this case some extra coins, because I really can't help myself. While this level didn't get any massive reroutes like some of the others, the new gun strats definitely saved a bit of time in the boss fight, plus now we get a whole 500 extra Bushido over the previous route, which is huge for the next level, Cave of the Ancients. Now this level can sort of play out in 2 ways, where we either break the other handgun before reaching the cave, or we save it for the boss for some decently quick damage. What we choose to do solely depends on how much Bushido we've collected along the way. During this run, I'd say I was collecting a lot more money compared to other resources, so I already knew I wouldn't have enough. Which is fine because the gun is great for clearing out beetles. Also, I love how even in the small platforming sections like this, there are so many different options on how to handle things. For instance, I chose to guard slide attack into a ledge, allowing me to double jump out of it, landing closer to the ground compared to if I just done a short hop. Then out of the chest I do a dodge forward, jump cancel it, and extend the jump distance with an aerial attack. There's so many spots like this in the run that I've really enjoyed trying to mentally figure out how to save time with movement because there's so many different options to choose from. Moving on, we'll have our first required fight dealing with the yellow hunters. Honestly, these guys aren't too bad to deal with even though they have guns. Guard slide is just so OP as a perfect defensive and offensive option combined. Also, while dealing with these gator bots, we'll want to steal a club from them just because it's the quickest way to get a mace, which we'll use for shenanigans later on. Moving on, we'll run past the shop, but won't purchase anything this time around, although I am considering buying a normal longbow here since they are so much cheaper and easier to break than other bows, which might come in handy later. Anyways, moving on, I'll continue taking out mobs trying to use up the rest of my shots until the gun breaks, giving me the final Bushido needed to unlock Jump Good. As a reminder, Jump Good allows Jack to jump out of a guard to gain way more height than a traditional double jump. It can be light attacked out of with a sword for even more height, and can still be double jumped out of for again, even more height. This will be very useful as I do a big menu up here to put all my weapons into place, including the beetle drone combo we got from the previous boss, the fists, and of course, the club. I'll also equip the Kaiken for the next level, and then unlock the Better Luck, Dodge Roll, and Jump Good abilities. Lastly, I'll put the game to 240 FPS, and start going crazy. The mace attack is really useful for platforming in this area, not only for speed, but also to get Jack on this invisible ledge, which can be platformed up to clip into the cave. This is why it's so nice to have Jump Good unlocked by this point. From here I'll proceed out of bounds, jump into the load trigger, and double jump back onto the surface, which is really difficult to time with the lag, and head over to the side of the cave entrance. With some well-spaced jump goods, we can get Jack back on top of the level, and begin making our way to the boss. While moving through here, obviously the terrain can be a little janky, and also invisible, so I'll just do my best with the movement options I have access to, until I get just above the boss area, and then drop down. Fall damage gets reset upon double jumping, which is really convenient as we're able to reach the bottom without as little as a scratch. And from outside the arena, we can hit the boss trigger to place Jack inside. Now at this point, there's a 50-50 chance the boss's AI will be broken, allowing us to take him out a bit quicker, which I thought would almost be required for a good time here. But by using the guard slide with the beetle combo weapon, I was able to do pretty good damage to the boss. The guard slide is so good because it essentially gives Jack armor, and he doesn't get affected by any of the moves, assuming you time them correctly. When the boss is staggered, I like to use light attacks with the sword and then cancel the end lag on the combo by switching back to the comma. This unfortunately only works with the base combos and not guard slide attacks, but I think it's pretty useful here. The only thing that would be better would be headshot piercing arrows like the world record run uses, but these can only be obtained as RNG drops within the caves, so I definitely appreciate that this new reroute avoids that luck-based aspect. Anyways, as the boss gets to low HP, I'll switch to the fist and guard slide attack the boss until he staggers once more and then steal his weapon. Next, we're on to the Undead Cemetery. This level is unique in that it's pretty much the only level that doesn't really have any big skips viable for either category. This is due to the entire level being surrounded with not just invisible walls, but also an invisible ceiling covering practically the whole thing. There's only one spot in the level that has an opening in the ceiling, and that's this area right by the start. The issue is there just isn't any exploitable geometry in the small area that would give us a massive amount of height required for clearing the wall. That is unless we want to do Toxic's mouse drag method. So instead I'll just be proceeding through as intended, but I do have a handful of time saves that I found over the world record. The first is using Kaiken to clear out most of the zombie enemies. In Ponton's run, he normally goes for a strong guard slide attack with the fist, which does one-shot these enemies, but the Kaiken is even better because not only does it one-shot the zombies, but it also allows me to strike them before they can dig into the ground, avoiding time waste waiting for them to surface. I will still choose to use this attack on close-by enemies to one-shot them, but by the time I get to this graveyard, I want to have used up every Kaiken. By this point, I should have a Kai attack saved up, so I'll run to the center of this graveyard and clear out the first wave of enemies immediately. This will cause the second wave of enemies to begin popping out of the ground, and ideally I can hit each of them with a shuriken before they can go back under, like you see me do in this run, wasting very little time. On the way out, I'll be sure to collect any money and projectiles I can get my hands on. Next, we'll stop by the shop to sell off my extra equipment and buy some piercing arrows and a bow for the upcoming boss fights. In hindsight, I do think something I'll change with the routing is instead of buying this leaf spring bow, I'll probably just buy a regular longbow from the previous level, since it is 500 coins cheaper and breaks a lot easier than the leaf bow, which will definitely come in handy later. For now, I'll stick with this bow and then have just barely enough coins to upgrade the sword to level 3, making it a bit stronger. Had I not picked up so many extra coins during this run, I most likely would not have been able to afford it. Moving on, we'll have another horde of zombies to deal with, which is easiest with a fist guard slide attack, and then once I move on to the second wave, I'll switch to the newly upgraded sword to take out the stronger enemies. Upon finishing the last zombie, a mini boss zombie warrior will spawn, but it's dealt with easily by using the sword Kai attack. I'll be sure to collect any extras before doing so, since the boss will run up to me anyways. Afterwards, I'll grab a 500 coin on the way out, which I'm not even sure is worth grabbing, but the reason I do so is because in this next area, we'd normally be given a chest for clearing out the enemies. But instead, I did somehow find a skip for the section. By using this crevice, I can zip up to an invisible wall with a small shelf attached to it, and walk along it to the blocked off passageway. And not only to my surprise that I can even walk up here to begin with, but there's no invisible wall above the gravestones, meaning I can just skip the section completely. Following this, there will be a lengthy 2D section, and I'll just spam the sword guard slide attack and use throw when applicable. During this time, I'll build up another Kai attack to be used in the final area. After clearing the 2D section, I'll end up at this portal to take me to the other side of the chasm, and then head into the mausoleum. I'll start out by taking out the zombies with the bow and arrow I picked up in Boon's castle until I fire 19 shots, keeping it one arrow away from breaking, and then finish off the rest with shuriken. Once this first wave is dealt with, I can use the fist Kai attack to clear out the second wave instantly. I must have misspaced this slightly as there was 2 survivors remaining, so I took those out to start the Demongo boss fight. Demongo fights are pretty easy to beat quickly when headshotting with the piercing arrows, because they pierce through enemies while they're guarding, which he is always doing during his animations. Anyways, once he's dealt with, I'll pick up any coins lying around, as well as Demongo's loot, and then head into the Hag Witch boss fight. A reroute I decided for this fight is to use a nearly broken longbow, load it with a piercing arrow, and instantly headshot the boss. The 5x multiplier of breaking the bow, stacked with the piercing arrow and headshot, one-shot the boss. Since the fight ends so quickly, I won't be able to collect the Bushido that drops from the bow, but having a quick and consistent boss fight is more than worth it to me. Moving on to the next level, Aku City, I'll switch to the bow and arrow and take out most of the enemies. Most of the earlier sections of this level are just clearing out enemies and movement, so there's not a ton to point out. I would suspect that this level probably has the most potential for finding a new skip in the earlier section. Hey there guys, it's editing EZScape here, and I am eating my words currently because Toxic did manage to find a skip in this level. Basically what he's doing is he is going to do a guard slide attack right at the start. I don't know if that gate is either like closing or if it's just not loaded in. Either way, he got through it. He found a trick that like a 4-frame window with this pole to gain additional height. I'm sure is going to come into play later on. And pretty much the end of the first half of the level, like you guys are about to see, is right there. Moving on, there are these little bugs that if Jack makes contact with, they'll blow up and stun lock him for a long time. But I found a pretty good path for baiting out their jumps to avoid them. Later on in the level, we'll jump deeper within the sewers to take on some sewer gators. Per usual, these can be taken out quickly with guard side attacks, as well as taking out gators on the opposite end with the bow and arrow to clear the final waves a bit quicker. The main thing to point out here is a new enemy we have to deal with for this level called the Imikandi. These enemies have better AI than most of what we've had to deal with so far, and will often block attacks, so it's hard to land full combos on them. For this reason, I start out by attacking with a guard slide, and then as Jack lands on the ground, I start a light attack into a strong attack for an uppercut combo. By performing the inputs as Jack lands on the ground, cancels out most of the animation and hitbox of the first hit of the combo, requiring us to only land one hit before chaining into the uppercut. This is beneficial because, like I said before, they can block attacks, so cutting a whole move out of a combo ensures we're more likely to land the full thing. The animation cancel can also be performed by guarding, but doing it out of a landing is much more practical. Following this encounter, we'll finally exit the sewers, leading to the heart of Aku City. But don't miss the sewers too much, because we'll be back there soon enough. Nearby, there's an encounter with some hunters equipped with RPGs, but we don't have time for that, so I'll raise my FPS to 240 once again and begin scaling this building. Let me try that again. The higher FPS helps with Jack getting stuck in between the sign and the pipe to climb upwards. Then with some well-spaced jump goods, I'll make my way up the building and out of bounds. From here, we'll once again be in the sewers. Or I guess on top of them in this case. Either way, like I said, it did not take long to get back to the sewers. Next, I'll continue traversing through the area while avoid falling in any gaps. Just assume I know the invisible walls here pretty well. Once I reach this reddish tunnel, we can see a character model loaded in, and we'll want to land right on it, hoping the game loads quickly enough so that Jack doesn't hit the death plane. We'll once again need to deal with Imikandi, but this is pretty easy since I have a Kai attack I can use to clear them out. Afterwards, Jack will get kidnapped by bounty hunters, leading to a 2D train section. Again, there's not too much to point out here other than trying to figure out the easiest way to clear out large groups of enemies. For instance, doing one light attack with a sword can hit both beetles, plus the robot that spawns behind Jack. But in other cases, it's the usual guard slide attack spam and throw. Eventually we'll encounter the bounty hunter Zeke. He'll always open with the same move, so I'll attempt to parry it, but even if I mistime it, usually I'll still be able to guard it, and then go into a guard slide spam to stun lock him into the corner. Once his health is at 50%, he can be thrown away. To be honest, the only thing I wish I did differently during this section is when fighting Zeke on top of this railroad car is to use my Kai attack to finish him off quicker, because you can't really guard slide spam him here without knocking him off. Once we reach the end of the train, we'll have a showdown versus the two. I'll start out by dealing with Zeke first and push him into the wall. Josephine should be far away enough that she doesn't bother us, and if she does happen to come in, it is possible to combo them both at the same time. Once Zeke is finished off, I'll direct my attention to her, spamming uppercut combos until she gets staggered, and then steal her umbrella to sell off later. Next up is the level Ruined City, and right off the bat, you can see exactly why I said earlier I should probably just buy a normal longbow instead of the leaf bow, because this was way further away from breaking than I initially thought it would be. To be fair, when making the segmented run, I didn't think the upcoming skip would actually be used in runs, because I spent over an hour trying to hit it once with no luck. But anyways, I am getting ahead of myself here. After exhausting the remaining arrows to get the bow close to breaking, I'll spawn in these enemies and take out the back row with rocket launchers. I'll then need to wait before finishing off the remaining beetles and parry some of their attacks. This is because parrying can give a large amount of Kai fire, and I'll want to farm at least 2 to 3 drops off them before proceeding in order to have a Kai attack ready for the boss. To perform the next skip, I'll need to open up this chest, position Jack in his corner, and time a jump plus bow shot with a bow aimed like this. This gives Jack enough height to fly over the barrier to proceed from out of bounds. Apparently this trick is actually really consistent, and the reason I had so many issues pulling it off is because if the chest is already opened whenever you reload a checkpoint, the trick doesn't work, which makes no sense to me, but yeah. From here we can go to the opposite side of the level without having to explore all the buildings, fight any enemies, and we even get to skip a Demongo fight. By utilizing jump goods with aerial stalls, Jack is able to scale the side of the building. Thankfully there's a load trigger right by the building's exit. From here I'll try to destroy any groups of 2 crates in hopes of collecting more Kai fire, grab the silver bow to replace the one I just lost, and take out a handful of enemies. It is possible to skip some of this from out of bounds, but honestly, it doesn't even save much if any time, and I'd much rather collect resources in this area for gold later on. Moving on, we'll eventually get ambushed by a large group of beetles, but instead of taking them out through normal means, we can grab them with a fist to steal their arms. This gives us Reapers, which are one of the most useful range weapons in the game with how much damage they do. After clearing out all the beetles, ideally we'll have a Kai attack ready to go, and we can leave one beetle behind to keep this barrier up. By using a jump good, we can land on this pillar and jump even higher to get on the invisible wall leading out of bounds. From here we can walk alongside the perimeter until we reach this building, touch the load trigger to load in the rest of the level, and head into the boss fight against Scaramouche. Normally this fight has a bunch of different phases, and the boss will run away to play its flute, summoning enemies. Yeah, we don't have time for that. A couple of Reapers to the face, the sword Kai attack followed by even more Reapers takes them out easily. Now we're onto the level Snowy Forest. Normally by this point we would already have bought the level 4 sword, as it was required for performing most of the skips in this level. But of course, we've skipped so many coins by this point that it isn't possible to afford it. No big deal though, because of course Toxic managed to find a launch at the start of this level to get out of bounds instantly. This can be performed by breaking a weapon, but at this point, I don't have any extras, so I'm gonna have to use an NPC instead and try to time my jump with their attacks. From out of bounds, we're able to run all the way to the end of the level, but there's a slight problem, and that everything is completely unloaded. So once we reach the back half of the level, we can jump right at the spot to hit a load trigger to load the level in, with Jack still out of bounds. From here we can jump down into the water and hit the trigger for the boss from out of bounds. Then we'll just need to defeat the 6 Daughters of Aku. I handled this by guard slide attack spamming, and that's pretty much it. Guard slide is so OP that even with 6 of them, I don't really get interrupted at all and can maintain solid damage. Once the last sister is defeated, that marks the end of the level. Alright, hey there guys, so for the last 2 segments of the speedrun, these were not performed by me, but instead was performed by the world record holder Ponton. So I am just going to do some live commentary over this because I've actually only watched these once. The reason why I had Ponton do these segments rather than me doing them is just because he is much more familiar with the end of the game. I spent a ton of time in those earlier, 7 levels, really trying to refine things and also just keep up with Toxicpinhead. And I didn't really get a chance to both properly learn the late game levels as well as master the dive good technique. So I would kind of say I threw Ponton to the wolves because he did not manage any of the inventory or equipment that he's using. Like right here, he's just gonna be upgrading a bunch of stuff that I didn't even know or bother to upgrade. No idea how much it really helps, but it's probably worth doing. But yeah, as you could probably guess, I am really down bad when it comes to coins because of how much got skipped, and a big part of this theoretical route was figuring out if the coin route could still work. Now he is going to be losing quite a bit of time here due to not having dive good unlocked right now or the level 4 sword, but that's not a big deal. That is because I did check before giving him this file that it would be possible to buy the level 4 sword. You just have to wait a bit to unlock it throughout this level. That's why he's going to be picking up this gold chest here for the 2000, and that's going to give him the perfect amount. And then he can head over to the shop here to upgrade that sword. All right, the sword was just purchased. All right, so now he's going to be hopping into a Demongo fight. And he's going to go ahead and just take him out and deal with him now rather than having him bother him while he's trying to do a really new skip that before I asked him to do this segment, he had never done this skip before. So it's going to be really cool seeing him try to perform it. Cutscene's probably going to mess with him there on trying to get into this. This is actually a really difficult jump to make. So you can see it's probably going to take him a couple tries, but all in all, it's still going to be worth it, and it's still going to save time over the world record. And you will see exactly why that is the case now. Basically, yeah, none of that was physical up there, and there's enough of a out of bounds platform to walk on and basically just stay out of bounds here. But right now he's inside this ship, and he is just gonna go ahead and fly out of bounds to the end of the entire level, just like so. But I guess after landing here, even though you do hit the trigger to load in the level, you're still out of bounds. So he's gonna have to figure out a way to get in bounds. First of all, trigger the boss fight, and then he makes his way in like this. And then for dealing with the boss fight, you know, we are just gonna guard slide him to death because I probably did not give Ponton enough resources to deal with this fight properly. But even with the slow skip, even with the slow boss strats, this is all in all going to be much faster than what the world record was even doing. So it was really cool to see him perform this skip. And yeah, we'll use the Kai attack just to finish this boss off. Boom. Nope, not yet. Boom. Maybe. Please. Just. There we go, baby. That's how it's done. Okay, and then we finally are up to the final level, Aku's Tower. Like I said before, I did not leave him with enough resources. I definitely probably used too many Reapers when killing Scaramouche, but I was not about to fumble that boss fight after taking forever to get the right amount of Kai Fire and like actually getting a skip off. Like even just getting these segments, like I'm not saying it's not consistent, but like it's tough without having like a thorough route as far as resources go. That's definitely what we are going to need to be working on mostly. Yeah, he's pretty much just going to keep robbing these guys with their little arms and be using these for the final boss fight. I will say though, I do feel like throughout the run, I did pick up a pretty decent amount of like Kaiken, Shuriken, all of these different projectiles that it does seem like he had enough to work with at least without having to buy a bunch of stuff at the shop, which is, you're welcome, you know? But no, seriously, the RNG throughout this run was just like so good in terms of like item drops and money that even though some of the segments were obviously like they could have been faster, I just wanted to make sure that we had enough money to afford everything. That was by far the most important part, because like if we imagine we didn't have the level 4 sword right now, like what would we even do? All right, yeah, so he's gonna finish up killing all the enemies in the section. It's time for some skips, baby. Now I am curious if there is going to be any like wacky explosions or weapon breaks to fly to the top of the tower. Knowing Toxic, he's probably already found it by the time I'm recording this, but in the meantime, we're going to stick to the classic strats that have existed for a couple years now. Just using that dive good to fly across the barriers and grab onto the climbing portion. And just skip a couple of these fights here. So in the shop, it looks like he's calculating, figuring out exactly what he should spend money on. He's going to get a Warhammer. That is for the Kai attack. I sold all of the Warhammers earlier to afford a level 3 sword. So he's going to have to end up buying that back and then just buying a bunch of arrows, I guess. He's getting a couple piercing arrows too. Can't overbuy anything here because he's also going to need a potion of power and a power bracelet just for a couple buffs. I'm assuming to skip a couple of cycles with Aku. All right, the shop is complete. And again, I left this man with no bows. So he's going to have to work this one down. The only reason for buying the arrows there was just to work the bow down, probably for a broken headshot. Yeah, this silver bow is has a lot of durability. Looks like he has 11 more arrows that he needs to shoot. All right, and we are all good to go. Onwards and upwards. Yeah, he triggers the fight, hops back on the invisible wall, and rides it across. All right, we're going to do it again, and now it is finally time for Aku. Beautiful skips done by Ponton there. So he's got a power potion bound, and he's got the Warhammer bound. It is time to take on the head honcho. Immediately going in with a dive good and some Reapers, waiting for the invincibility to wear off. Getting him to a very specific health value. A couple unfortunate hits there. You got to like dodge in to avoid those. I think he wants to get the Reapers up until just before half health. Warhammer to get him here. And I'm assuming right before the phase starts, we're just going to go pop him in the head, and that is the fight. Beautiful. Alrighty then, guys. I do hope you enjoyed this showcase. Honestly, I had no idea when I got into this game just how long it was going to take for me to learn and grind the game, especially with all the new tech and tricks that are being discovered at a rapid rate. I do think I'll run this game more in the future so I can submit it into events, because I do think it's really fun, and the speedrun looks even crazier now compared to when I started learning it. At the end of the day, I do wish I could have posted this video with a complete route, but who really knows how long it's going to take to complete? But this is my job, and as much as I'd love to take 3 months off to play Samurai Jack every day, there are other projects I'd like to pick up. With that being said, I did promise you guys a bounty, and after a lot of deliberation, I've decided to announce 2 bounties for this game. $100 is going to go to whoever has any % world record by the end of the month, with the only stipulations being that I can't win the bounty myself, and that the run needs to at least be a sub 40-minute time IGT, or else the bounty will expire by February 28th. Also, throughout the month of February, whoever manages to find the most influential trick, skip, or whatever else is out there to make this game even faster than what it currently is, will get $100. But no current discoveries will be applicable for this challenge. Sorry, Toxic, but I'm sure you'll find the credits warp by next Tuesday anyways. This bounty will be chosen at my discretion, and if you don't like that, then yeah, I don't really know what anyone is going to do about that. Anyways, thanks again for watching this video. If you did enjoy, be sure to leave a like to show support, and subscribe for more speedrunning related content. Special thanks again to Factor for sponsoring this video. Reminder, you guys can get 50% off your first box using my link in the description, and it does support me so I can make more fun little bounties for these different games I get into. That's all for today. Peace, and as always, I hope you all have a beautiful life.